All right, everybody, this is Ross. In today's video, I'm really excited to share with you guys some things that have been happening with the fig trees. And also I want to put together some thoughts for you guys in this video to kind of put together some techniques that we've been doing here in colder climates into like a full package, a full methodology of growing figs in colder climates. I really do believe that this methodology is probably one of the best ways to grow figs in a cold climate. It doesn't matter where you guys are at in a cold area, in a shorter season, this will really help and this will really work. And now a lot of people will argue in colder climates that you have to grow them in pots. And I have a system here that's less work, it's more affordable, it's less time consuming, and it's you get a lot more fruit when you do it this way. So let me talk to you guys about what I have set up here, which is kind of brand new to the backyard, is that we have set up the bare bones now of some low tunnels. And the reason why we're able to use low tunnels with these figs is how I have them, with the techniques that I'm using, how I've set them all up. We have them spaced very close together. These trees are only 2 feet apart. In fact, I'm going to be able to fit a third row in here underneath these low tunnels. So they're very close together. Also, we cut them back. We have this method of protecting them in the wintertime called the chop and cover method, where we chop them all down to about 6 to 12 inches. Over time, they're going to form many different trunks at the base. And you just keep kind of chopping them back as if they were like a Japanese espalier or a cordon system. You just keep coming back to spurs, as an example. Leave a couple buds and they'll just keep resprouting from that low point. And that will be the new growth for the season. And that way they're also very size controlled. And now that they're size controlled, they're spaced very closely, they're actually considered a low growing crop, and something you could actually use a low tunnel for. So most of the time when people are using these low tunnels is that they're growing things like a market gardener, and they're growing cool loving crops, things that can grow all wintertime, or some nice season extension, or to speed up the days to maturity on different crops like lettuces and brassicas and things like that. This is really also increasing the days to maturity for the figs, is that you're getting a lot of heat units, because what we're going to do, we haven't gotten the plastic yet in the mail, guys. It's coming very soon, but as you can see, we've set up the bare bones, but we're going to throw over the plastic over top of this, clip that onto this, and we're going to have ourselves, again, a low tunnel, right? So that greenhouse plastic, because of the greenhouse effect, creates an environment that's extremely warm. You know, I would expect that if it's probably 60 degrees outside, in the low tunnel it's going to be close to 90, maybe even 100 degrees. And you know, that heat is going to quickly dissipate during the nighttime. It's not going to stay in the low tunnel because there's very little insulation. It's just one layer of plastic. However, what it is doing is really warming up the soil, and that is the key here, guys. With any of these crops, with any of our food that we grow, they really need a warmer soil temperature, and every different thing that we grow requires a different soil temperature to achieve a higher metabolism, a higher metabolic rate, just like us as humans. I mean, we've talked about this so many times, guys, on the YouTube channel, that you just need a lot of heat for the figs, especially at the soil level. So we're going to get that. Everything in here is going to be growing like gangbusters, and the idea is that we're going to be able to grow these figs, get them off to a very early head start with the help of this plastic. Now you may be thinking at this point, well, if I leave these low tunnels up, they're only about 3 feet high. You know, that's not going to work, because the fig tree, even if you cut it all the way down to the base, they're going to regrow all the way up to 6 feet, 9 feet. Some of them grow very quickly, and that's in one season. So 3 feet's not going to cut it. It's going to very quickly reach the top of the plastic. So we're going to have to take them down. And that's sort of the beauty of The system, and I guess the way that I have, or I should say the design that I went with on these low tunnels, is that this is a very easy to set up and very easy to take down design, and that we can very simply just put some rebar into the ground and then slide over this 1/2-inch PVC poles over top of the rebar. It's a nice snug fit. We can lift this up or put it back on very easily, and then we just take the plastic, slide it right on over. I got these clips from Home Depot. You just clip it on at different points. You can even roll up the sides and clip the sides so that you can have better airflow and less heat in here if it's really warm in these low tunnels, which it will be. So the design's pretty simple, is that it's easy to set up, it's affordable as well. I probably spent, you can see this is the southern exposure here. I have figs going, or a low tunnel going this way, a low tunnel going that way, and then on, even by the greenhouse, we're gonna have these low tunnels set up. Also on the west side of the house, because we have over 100 trees now in the ground, about 90% of them are gonna be covered in the spring with these low tunnels. Now, we're going to have to take them down, as I mentioned, and that's pretty key here to this whole methodology, is that we don't want to have them on here too long. I have to still figure out the specifics of when I'm going to take them down. I know for sure that when I'm going to unveil them, because just let's fast forward a little bit here. Let's say we're at the end of our season in the fall. As you guys know, a lot of trees here in this climate, in zone 7 or lower, the chances of them surviving a winter is quite low. If you see about 5 degrees, you might get pretty lucky. If you see 0 degrees, you're probably, you're not looking too good. So the point is that we need to protect these trees. And a lot of you guys go through crazy lengths of wrapping them. And you may have one tree and that's it. You wrap that one tree. This is a lot different in that you set up these low tunnels, have a lot of fig trees in a very small, tight space that are going to be very productive, and then set up the low tunnel in the fall. When these trees go dormant, we cut them all back to 6 to 12 inches, do our pruning. We can even do something called limb bending, where we might be able to preserve some of these limbs that shoot up from the base. We can cut them down to a higher height instead of 6 to 12 inches, and then bend the limbs over, and we can tie them down to the ground very easily with some garden staples. But because we actually are going to set this up for dormancy, this is a method of winter protection. It's pretty much having like my greenhouse over there that you guys have probably been in touch with so many times now, that we talk about that greenhouse, what effect they have on these trees and during that wake-up process, but also the method of protection that they give during the wintertime. In fact, this year, when I put the tarp over top of the greenhouse, actually preventing the sunlight from going in, because as I mentioned, as much as this is going to provide heat during the day, during the night, it's not. And that's when the winter protection really matters. So we need to insulate this somehow. And I have tarps. We'll basically have the hoop set up, the low tunnel set up, throw over the tarps, make sure the tarp is attached, it's not going anywhere. That provides a really great method of insulation. And even this winter, it was quite mild, I have to admit, but I didn't even have to run a heater in the greenhouse one time. So I imagine because these trees are so low, also because they're in ground, I'm not going to have a heater. I'm not going to have a heat source, because the ground is the heat source. If we trap in that heat with enough insulation, maybe even throw some straw over top of these trees as we did this past winter, we'll be okay. So I think that solves a big issue right there, is winter protection. Then once the season begins, which for me in this area is going to be March 1st, around that date, I start to take the cover off the greenhouse. I start to turn on the heater. Here in this low tunnel situation, I'm going to uncover them, put the tarp aside, and then I'm going to just let them warm up during the day. And the soil temperatures will gradually increase. And I would say probably about, maybe 15, 20, 25 days later, a lot of these trees are going to be awake, and they're going to be growing, and I'm going to have fig trees in the ground that are starting their metabolic process roughly a month, maybe even more than a month earlier than they normally would. And that to me is a big money maker right there. It makes a lot of sense because these pots, as an example, is that I want to give you guys a couple examples why these are obsolete. The pots are obsolete now. For people in shorter seasons and colder climates, I know this doesn't make sense for everybody. Some of you guys may just have a patio, or you might just have a deck or, you know, an apartment, and this is all you can do. But if you have some land and you can set up a low tunnel like this, it just seems like a no-brainer to me. And you can grow a lot of figs in a very small space. So, you know, the reasons why I think they're obsolete is, one, we already sort of talked about this, but this is really affordable. Setting up these low tunnels is a lot less work. You know, moving these pots around and up-potting them and getting soil and bringing it back and doing all kinds of crazy stuff and watering them almost every day and feeding them a couple times a year. You know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. Everything that goes into this, the pots, the soil, the water, the fertilizer, you know, all of it is just so much work and money. Whereas if I just dig a hole, put the fig tree in the ground, cover the, you know, put the dirt back, I walk away, I'm done. Here in this climate, I don't have to water them, I don't have to feed them. Our soil's very heavy clay, so it holds a lot of water, it has a lot of nutrients. And then, you know, I just put these low tunnels up, put them up once a year and take them down once a year. And that's the extent of the work that goes into these trees. I have to cut them back. You still have to prune these other trees too. So it's a lot less work. It's a lot more affordable. These low tunnels, I set up 5 of them, 500 square feet to be exact, maybe even more than that, of low tunnels cost me $250. That's a one-time cost compared to having all these pots and having them, you know, have soil every year, water every year, fertilizer every year. It just seems like a no-brainer. Now, the last point of why these pots are going to be obsolete for me, and for probably a lot of you guys, is that you're growing them in the ground. There is no substitute. You can give these trees as much nutrients as you want and as much water as you want. You're not going to be able to compete with something that's in the ground. The only advantage that these pots had was that they got off to an earlier start because I could move them. They're also above the ground, having access to more heat that way. The soil temperatures warm up quicker, therefore they get off to an earlier start. They're not as productive. They can be quite productive, but assuming we give our trees in the ground more heat units and we get them off to an early start, they're more productive than the trees in the pots. And if they're also earlier now, because these trees with the low tunnels are waking up a month earlier than these trees, and they're getting a lot more heat units every single day, I imagine that these trees are going to produce about 15 days earlier than the potted trees. Probably sometime here, with a very early variety, I can get fruits off of these in-ground trees by July 15th. Wouldn't that be incredible? That would be insane. These potted trees, the very earliest that they will fruit for me with just no head start, bringing them out here on the patio, getting them as much heat as I can, they'll fruit for me at the earliest date, August 1st. And that's in an average good year. So, you know, an average good spring, you know, with enough heat will probably get you a date by August 1st. So the point is that a lot of this stuff is completely obsolete. And what I want to do now is I actually have a blog post, guys. I wrote up all this stuff that I've been talking to you guys about right now. I wrote all this stuff up on the blog, figboss.com. You guys can go there to the blog and see this exact post. But I want to read to you guys some of the things here that I probably have forgotten in this video. So far, they're affordable. They're a lot less work. The growing degree day difference is really something, which is the heat units. And I guess we talked about that, but if you think about the difference that my greenhouse gets and how far ahead those trees are today, we're not even at April 1st, by the way. and those trees are already fruiting in the greenhouse. They're starting the beginning of that fruiting process. So imagine what these in-ground trees will do. They're not going to wake up nearly as quickly, or they're not going to perform nearly as well as some of those trees in the greenhouse, simply because we don't have a heater in there, a space heater. But these guys are going to probably fruit for me by July 15th, I imagine. And it's all because of that heat units. All that heat, because of that greenhouse plastic, is just going to be insane. That greenhouse effect on a tree, a desert-like tree, like the fig tree, that likes those desert-like conditions, the drier, very warm conditions, it's going to be perfect. We talk about so many times just increasing those soil temperatures, guys. Now, a couple of things that we need to sort of adjust to make this thing more efficient and work out really, really well is, of course, the training that we're going to be doing. How many shoots from the base do I want to select and allow to grow? You know, how many branches when I cut them all back to 6 to 12 inches? How far do I want to cut them back? Do I want to do some limb bending as we mentioned, guys? You know, what is going to be the techniques there with the training and the pruning to really hammer this down, this technique down, to make it perfect? Again, they're not permanent. We can take them down and put them back up. And they also offer a method of winter protection. So I don't really know how else I can convince you guys other than to show you how we go along this season with this technique, and then also next season, because next season it's going to be even better. A lot of the trees in here are not even a year, they're a year old at this point. Some of them are going to be 2 years in the ground now, and we're going to see how this method works. And this, I'm just super excited to show you guys the results, because especially because we're going to bring a lot of these fruits to market this year. That's our goal, was to get commercial figs, to sell them locally. And all I had to do was spend $250 to really make that just astronomically easier. And also I can get them earlier than the competitors. I'm going to have these fruits probably at the same time around California does, with the help of this system here. I'm also going to have them at a very high quality because they're local, and I'm going to be able to just drive down the road and hand them a basket of figs, charge them probably an outrageous price, and I'll be able to say without a doubt that these are a better quality than what you can get when they ship them all the way from California across the country. I mean, it's just going to be no comparison. I'm going to be able to basically choose my own price. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Do I need to continue? In fact, I think, I don't mean to sound, you know, too cocky here, because we haven't really seen exactly how this is going to work out. But, you know, this is a method, a group of techniques that forms a methodology that, in all honesty, I should be getting paid for. You know, this is the kind of thing that you patent, a technique like this. You know, you kind of write up some kind of scientific thing and then you get paid for it. But you know what? I am going to get paid for it because I'm going to be selling these fruits, and that's how I'm going to get paid. So I encourage you guys to do this yourself. You live in a colder climate, you enjoy figs. There's very few ways better than this to do it. I promise you that. So anyway, guys, yeah, can't wait to keep you guys up to date. If you enjoyed this one, check out our blog and check out the blog post that I was talking about on figboss.com. Also subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. And we will see everybody soon, all right? Thank you guys for watching this one. Take care, guys. I'll see you for tomorrow's video.